I feel like I would be a really good ref, though, from the side.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't miss a call.
Backseat ref.
I swear, if I ever became a ref, I'd probably be the sharpest one on the floor because I wouldn't miss a single call. And honestly, that's exactly what was running through Caitlin Clark's mind when she unleashed one of the boldest interviews of her career, sitting down with Sue Bird and breaking the silence on her injury nightmare in a way that the league couldn't just sweep under the rug. Because when the WNBA's golden goose goes down hard and the league acts like everything's perfectly fine, you know something bigger is going on. And this time, she didn't hold back. Not on the pain, not on the frustration, and definitely not on the cold truth about how the league treats its biggest star. She detailed the emotional punch of being thrown straight into Game 30 with zero ramp up. The respect she's gained for injured teammates who've been quietly pushing through hell for years, and the brutal reality of what it feels like to watch your team fight from the bench while ticket sales tank and television ratings slide. Without you on the floor, she made it clear this wasn't just a personal setback, it was a wake-up call for the entire league. Because Caitlin Clark isn't just talking about injuries, she's pulling the curtain back on a system that depends on her star power while leaving her unprotected. And the way she tells it will make you wonder if the WNBA is ready to protect its players or if they'll just keep pretending nothing's wrong until it's too late. Caitlin Clark's season didn't unravel slowly. It was like one brutal hit after another, starting in preseason, when a left quad injury instantly changed everything and sidelined her for 4 games before she fought her way back, only to play some of her best basketball and then get slammed with another setback. A left groin injury that kept her out of 4 more regular season games. And even the Commissioner's Cup final, and just when she thought she'd finally shaken it off, the groin injury in mid-July broke her patience completely. This wasn't just about physical pain, it was the constant mental battle, the stop-and-go chaos that chewed away at her rhythm and her confidence in ways she'd never felt before she'd gone from being a college Iron Woman who never missed games to a pro suddenly learning how vicious the grind can be. And when she told Sue Bird, it's not like I have a training camp, I'm just tossed into Game 30 with no build-up, just hoping my body holds together. You could hear the frustration in every word because every comeback was a gamble. Could her body keep up or would it betray her again? And then came the text from her mom that hit her harder than of any defender saying, "You've given so much time to everyone else. Now it's time to give time to yourself." And that was the moment Clark's mindset shifted from racing to return for the league to finally protecting her own health. The numbers told the story the league didn't want to admit because with Clark on the court, the Fever went 8-5, but without her, they were a flat 9-9. And it wasn't just the standings that shifted the entire vibe of the team changed, the offense slowed down, the ball movement got predictable, and the scoreboard reflected it. Ticket sales dipped, television ratings dipped, the energy in the arena dipped. The May 17th matchup against the Chicago Sky had pulled a massive 2.5 million viewers, but without Clark and a few other stars, ABC games barely cracked 1.5 million, and that's the kind of drop executives can't ignore. Meanwhile, the Fever were hanging on to a playoff fight with a roster so banged up that some nights only 9 players suited up and hardship rules kept them from adding more. Clark said those weeks gave her a whole new respect for every teammate who's played through pain before her because she'd never been forced to experience the WNBA grind like this. And the hardest part wasn't just the physical rehab, it was waking up after a game, not knowing if her body would even let her practice the next day. So she started giving herself the one thing she'd never had before: patience and grace. Because as her mom reminded her, sometimes the smartest move isn't rushing back to play. It's protecting yourself for the long game. By the time she sat down with Sue Bird, Caitlin Clark had been quiet for weeks, but the moment the cameras started rolling, she dropped the kind of line that set the internet on fire. When Sue asked about her sideline presence during games she'd missed, Clark smirked and said, "I was mostly coaching the refs," and then delivered the knockout punch. "I'd make a good ref. I wouldn't miss a call." And it wasn't just a joke. It was a direct shot at the league's biggest dirty secret: officiating inconsistency. Because coaches had complained, players had complained, fines had been handed out to anyone bold enough to say it publicly. And here was the WNBA's top ticket seller timing her words perfectly so no one could dismiss it as rookie frustration. She didn't say it out of anger. She said it with humor and conviction, making it clear this wasn't about missed calls for her. This was about a system she'd been watching from the bench, seeing her teammates get hammered with no whistles, spotting patterns in how certain games were called. And after taking her own share of cheap shots, she'd had enough that single comment turned into a movement because within minutes, clips were trending. Fans were debating whether she'd crossed a line or simply said what everyone else was too scared to say. And players from around the league were quietly sliding into her DMs, thanking her for saying out loud what they'd been screaming in locker rooms for years. The league's response to Clark's shot at officiating was silence, and that silence was deafening. No statement, no memo, no attempt to publicly address the fact that their brightest star had just questioned the integrity of the game. But behind closed doors, insiders said tensions were boiling. Some executives wanted to pull her aside and remind her to keep her opinions in-house, while others warned that trying to muzzle her would only make the story bigger. The referees' union was reportedly irritated. Some officials felt personally called out, yet even league sources admitted she wasn't wrong because data was already showing wild inconsistencies in foul calls from team to team and market to market, social media only. Poured gas on the fire, hashtags like Clark was right and fix the whistle started trending every questionable call. In other games, had fans tagging her name, demanding her opinion, and suddenly she'd become the face of the league's officiating. Debate whether the WNBA liked it or not. The Fever were caught in the middle, with coaches forced to answer more questions about her comments than about actual game strategy, and teammates publicly backing her, calling her fearless and protective of her squad. By the end of the week, this had become bigger than an interview. Clark had started a conversation the league couldn't put back in the box. When Clark finally stepped back on the court, the spotlight wasn't just on her game, it was on the whistle. Every fan in the arena was waiting to see if the refs would treat her differently after her comments. And from the opening tip, the tension was electric the first time she drove into the lane and took contact without a foul. The crowd erupted in boos, cameras zoomed in on her face, and there it was, that same smirk from the Sue Bird interview, only now aimed straight at the officials. Her teammates fed off the energy. Every bucket she scored, every assist she dropped felt like a statement. Midway through the second quarter, she drew a clear foul on a three-point attempt. The whistle blew, and the arena exploded. And when she looked at the baseline ref and gave a slow nod, fans instantly started dissecting it online. Within hours, clips were everywhere. Millions of views, captions like "power move" and "she runs this now" were flooding social feeds. ESPN debates broke out over whether she just earned more respect from refs or whether they were pushing back to prove they couldn't be influenced. And former players jumped in, some praising her for demanding higher standards. Others warning she was playing a dangerous game, but Clark stayed calm, brushing it off in her post-game presser with just one line: "I play the game, everyone else can talk about the rest." That single line became the quote of the day, cool, controlled, and dripping with authority. And by the afternoon, the story had spilled out of the sports world and into mainstream news, now framed as a battle between a superstar's influence and the league's institutional power. The WNBA was trapped. They couldn't risk alienating Clark, but they also couldn't pretend she hadn't just dragged their officiating under a national spotlight. And the truth was, this was only scratching the surface of what she'd been enduring, because behind the highlight reels was a much darker reality. Every night, she was taking punishment that went way beyond normal defense, constant, full court pressure traps, elbows to the ribs, collisions before she could even set her feet. It wasn't just welcome to the league roughness, it was a targeted strategy to wear her down and chip away at her game. And the result was written all over her injury history. Repeated soft tissue issues, quad, groin, back to quad, had turned her season into a start-stop grind. And for the first time, people were asking if this was basketball or a coordinated effort to push the league's biggest draw to her. Breaking point, and the more you looked, the harder it was to ignore. Clark and her teammates weren't keeping quiet about it either. They'd questioned calls and non-calls right from the sideline and in post-game interviews. And when she spoke, the league couldn't just wave it off because the pounding she was taking wasn't happening to every player. It was happening to the one who sells out arenas and drives ratings. And that raised the uncomfortable question the WNBA didn't want to answer. How do you balance letting them play with protecting the talent that keeps your league alive. Because if your golden goose is getting hacked, shoved, and targeted night after night without a whistle, what does that say about your priorities? Clark's decision to speak out wasn't just about her, it was about setting a standard for every player who comes after her. And while she's been sidelined, the Fever haven't folded. Aaliyah Boston's been a powerhouse. Kelsey Mitchell's hit clutch shots. Lexi Hull's filled in the gaps. Sophie Cunningham's brought her trademark grit, and all of it means that when Clark returns, it's not just about getting their star back, it's about a team that's been battle-tested and ready to make noise, and that combination is exactly what should have the rest of the league nervous. Because the truth is, this isn't just about one season or one star. It's about whether the WNBA is willing to evolve before it loses the very players who keep it alive. Clark's return is more than a comeback. It's a statement she's not just stepping back onto the court to score points. She's coming back with a louder voice, a sharper edge, and a fan base that now sees her as more than a player. They see her as an advocate and maybe even a disruptor, and that's dangerous for anyone who benefits from keeping things the way they are. Her presence changes everything from how defenses prepare to how networks promote games, and if the league ignores what she's been saying about protection and officiating, they're not just risking her health. They're risking the trust of every fan who's bought into the Caitlin Clark era. So as the playoffs approach, the question isn't just whether the Fever can make a run, it's whether the WNBA is ready to fix the system before its brightest star decides she's done playing by their rules. So here we are, Caitlin Clark has turned what started as an injury-plagued season into a full-on reckoning for the WNBA. She's forced conversations the league has avoided for years. She's made officiating a national talking point. She's shown the cost of leaving stars unprotected, and she's proven that when she speaks, the entire sports world listens. The Fever have battled through injuries, survived the grind, and now stand ready for their leader's return. But this isn't just about basketball anymore. It's about power. Who has it? Who uses it? And whether the league is prepared to protect its biggest investment or gamble that she'll keep carrying the weight no matter the hits. Because one thing is clear, the Caitlin Clark era isn't just about points and assists. It's about changing the game from the inside out. And if the WNBA thinks this conversation is going away, they haven't been paying attention. So, what do you think? Is the league ready to protect its stars, or will they keep rolling the dice until their golden goose decides enough is enough?